Kote hapetzetza, the diameter of the bomb. Kote hapetzetza haya 30 centimeters, v'kote techum pegiata k7 meters. The diameter of the bomb. The diameter of the bomb was 30 centimeters, and the diameter of its effective range about 7 meters, with 4 dead and 11 wounded. And around these, in a larger circle of pain and time, 2 hospitals are scattered and 1 graveyard. But the young woman who was buried in the city she came from at a distance of more than 100 kilometers enlarges the circle considerably, and the solitary man mourning her death at the distant shores of a country far across the sea includes the entire world in the circle. And I won't even mention the crying of orphans that reaches up to the throne of God and beyond, making a circle with no end and no God. Hama'agal le'ein sof ve'ein Elohim. In the aftermath of the terrible attack here on June 1st, I and others were often asked to comment on its impact in the community, in the media, and in several different public communal venues when I was in London in July. And as I would begin to tell the story, I would often get very emotional, remembering its impact, telling the story from my perspective, and through the tears, I found myself quite often talking about the circles of trauma. And a few times I shared this powerful poem that I just read by the Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai. We are all in one of those circles. The poem is clearly about the impact of trauma and the concentric circles of pain that ripple to infinity from one single act of violence. A 30-centimeter bomb that ultimately impacts the whole universe. Throughout our history, there have been horrific events that impact us all in different ways, with varying degrees of traumatic reactions. And it's horrifying to think that one of those happened today in my native land of the UK. We could talk about all the impacts of floods and fires and shooting attacks in recent years just in our own community. We could talk, of course, about the horrific attack by Hamas on October 7th, 2023, 2 years next week. And of course now, June the 1st, 2025 in downtown Boulder. The poem can also be read as how any harsh act or even word ripples through time and space, impacting circles beyond those at the very center. The act perpetrated here in Boulder on June 1st that has been designated by local and federal authorities as an anti-Semitic hate crime had enormous, devastating and heartbreaking impact. And there are circles within circles of trauma, impacting, of course, those who were there and those who were not. At the center, again, is the tragic loss of our beloved member Karen Diamond, the intense grief of her family, all of those who were badly injured and are still recovering from their wounds, physical and emotional, those who were physically unharmed but witnessed an atrocity that will stay with them forever, and those, including me, who could so easily have been there that day on the peaceful Run for Their Lives walk to raise awareness for the hostages still in Gaza on Pearl Street that day. But we were not. The friends and extended families of the victims, the whole Jewish community in Boulder, throughout Colorado, throughout the United States, and throughout the world, Hama'agal le'ein sof, an infinite circle. In Yiskel, we remember Karen Diamond, and we remember all who have died through acts of violence and acts of terror. So much of our Jewish ritual is about what we do in community together, balanced with the profound moments of introspection. Our silent personal Amidah in each of the services during Yom Kippur is followed by a communal repetition, as if the deeply private prayers and confessions of the individual are brought together in a powerful chorus of connection. The Vidui, the confessional liturgy, is all recited in the plural. Ashamnu, Bagadnu, we have transgressed, we have betrayed. Chatanu lefanecha, we have sinned before you. Collectively, we have indeed created circles of trauma, circles of pain, circles of despair. In the poem, Yehuda Amichai meticulously measures the concentric circles of pain that ripple outward from that single act of violence. A 30-centimeter bomb with an effective range of 7 meters expands its suffering far beyond its blast zone, encompassing 2 hospitals and a graveyard. The circle stretches across 100 kilometers to reach the hometown of a young woman who was killed, and even farther to the solitary man who mourns for her. Ultimately, the pain reaches up to the throne of God and beyond, Kisei Elohim, creating a circle with no end, Ein Sof, and no God, Ein Elohim. As well as thinking of the very real impact of violent attacks and trauma on this Yom Kippur, we focus also on the circles of our own actions, how our personal transgressions always have ripple effects that go way beyond the immediate hurt. The initial blast is like our obvious and tangible offenses, the measurable destruction of our most direct and evident sins. The harsh words, the broken promises, the betrayal of trust, the violation of another's privacy, the gossip and the derision. The first step of teshuvah, of returning, of repentance, is to acknowledge the direct harm we've caused, the casualties impacted by our negative actions. The confession allows us to look right at the center of the blast and to name its impact. The circles in the poem expand to hospitals and graveyards, the young woman's faraway city, the solitary mourner by a distant sea. This is the circle of pain that extends through time, reaching people we might not even consider when we act or when we speak. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, says the book of Proverbs in chapter 18. Commenting on this verse, the Talmud in Arachim 15b states, actually a person's tongue is more powerful than their sword. A sword can kill somebody who is nearby. A tongue can cause the death of someone who is far away. Lashon hara, evil speech, kills 3 people: the speaker, the listener, and the subject. Depending how you count them, around 10 of the long list of the al-Chetz, the confessions that we make during Yom Kippur, are related to speech. Like the bomb, the diameter ripples out over time and over space. In the complicated work of anti-racism, there's this principle of impact over intention, meaning that the consequences of an action, whether positive or negative, are more significant than the intent or the motivation behind it. That is part of our focus on Yom Kippur as we think of those concentric circles of the impact we have had, even if our intentions were always pure. In Jewish life, regardless of what we believe or don't believe, we are always part of a larger circle of our community, the whole Jewish people and of all humanity. This is also reflected in Amichai's poem, which I think implies that the bomb could be an attack on us or an attack from us, and we take accountability as individuals and as the collective Jewish people. On Yom Kippur, we recognize that we are responsible for one another. Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Bazeh. And each of us holds a piece of what needs to be done to heal and what needs to be done to repair. Our individual failings can impact the entire community. So too, our goodness and our triumphs can strengthen it. Our collective prayer, our fasting, and our confession are acts that strengthen the circle as a whole. The heart-wrenching climax of the poem, Zakat Yetomim Hamagia Ad Lekisei HaElohim, the orphan's cries reach up to the throne of God. The intensity of the pain and the sorrow of the impact of loss can lead to a sense of a world Ein Sof ve'Ein Elohim, a world with no end and with no God, a crisis of faith that emerges from human suffering. Just as we hold ourselves and each other accountable, there is a very strong tradition of calling God to account on Yom Kippur too. Perhaps this is the meaning of the poem's Ein Elohim, not that there is no God, but that we challenge God. We mourn and cry out for all of the suffering, all of the violence, all of the loss, and we question why a world created by God can be filled with such injustice, demanding that it change just as we pledge to change. We join Abraham and Moses and the prophets of Israel in this challenge. The deepest, most fervent Jewish spiritual teachings have often come from times of persecution and suffering. Kabbalah and Hasidut, great mystical teachings and practices that were always accompanied by the yearning for Mashiach, messianic hope that came out of terrible times in our history when God's face seems most hidden. Hester Panim, that hidden face. I will never forget our dear friend Irene Rosenshine, who survived the horrors of Auschwitz and had, like all survivors, so many stories. And I remember her attributing her survival in some part to a sense of hope. A rumor spread around the camp, she would say, that Mashiach is coming next Tuesday. And Mashiach didn't come next Tuesday, but they went on. Mashiach's coming the following Thursday. And they went on, and they held on to that hope, that resilience. Omer Shem Tov, the 23-year-old Israeli who spent 505 days in captivity, including over a year in a Gaza tunnel, has inspired audiences around the world, including here in Boulder just a few weeks ago, with his stories of resilience. He survived, he said, by maintaining routines, staying mentally active, and praying. He says, I used to sit and talk to God. Thank you for letting me breathe, strengthen me, keep my family safe. In the hell of a tunnel in Gaza, he somehow kept himself alive and kept his faith and resilience going. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. That line that is the second line of the Shema, which usually we say quietly, we say out loud on Yom Kippur. Partly we say it because, as we're going to experience soon in the Avodah service, we're all like the high priest in the temple. But the Midrash, the rabbis, put these words into the mouth of Yaakov Avinu, into the mouth of Jacob, when he is responding to his sons on his deathbed who are saying Shema Yisrael. Jacob is connected to Ma'ariv, the prayer service of the night, darkness. And from that darkness emerges the affirmation that God's sovereignty is eternal, Ein Sof, without end, but not Ein Elohim, without God. Our tradition invites us to find God in the midst of human suffering, not just beyond it, and to recognize that we are partners in creation and partners in repair. What we do, what we say, how we act matters deeply. And our hope and our prayer is not that the diameter of the bomb would be smaller, but that the diameter of our compassion, our empathy, our healing, our forgiveness grow wider and wider, circles of light to push back the circles of darkness and suffering. Just as our words and our actions can create negative and destructive circles of impact, they can also create ever wider circles of healing and of hope if we commit to repair, starting with our small and immediate circle and allowing our influence and our generosity to expand, knowing that our cries can reach Ad Kisei Elohim, to the throne of God and beyond, as we partner in tikkun, as we partner in repairing this heartbreakingly broken world, one word, one act, one sincere apology at a time. G'mar Chatima Tova.